Tuesday, October 6th, 2015. This is Chris Padgett, and I'm an ICF professional certified coach in Louisville, Kentucky. And on behalf of my colleague and friend, Carl Van Hoy in Europe, we'd like to welcome you to the International Coach Federation Team and Group Coaching Community of Practice. We have an exceptional program planned for you today. And before we get started, just a few updates. Both the audio and video of today's program is being recorded and will be made available later on the group LinkedIn site. We had a tremendous response to today's program. There are coaches participating from 6 continents, a record of 175 coaches registered for today. And a special thanks goes out to Nicole Zafian with the International Coach Federation for connecting us to the software we are utilizing for today. This software enables many more coaches to access the community. And a special welcome to Elizabeth Jackson, who is new on staff at the International Coach Federation and who is providing support to the community. If you're not already done so, you are encouraged to complete a global coaching survey at www.coachingsurvey2015.com. The survey is open to both ICF members and non-members alike. And today's program qualifies for 1 hour of core competency of continuing coach education. To obtain your CCE certificate at the conclusion of the program, send an email to icfteamcoaching@gmail.com, and Elizabeth Jackson will fulfill your request. And you'll want to include in the email the 2 passwords shared during this program, and I'll be sharing the first one with you here momentarily. Before I introduce our speaker, I'd like to share the first password. The first password is STARRY, S-T-A-R-R-Y, STARRY. That is the first password, and the second password will be provided at the conclusion of the program. There are 2 handouts you'll find attached in the webinar. The first is a recent article Marita authored about team coaching in Choice magazine, and the second is our program calendar for the fall, winter, and spring. Both of these attachments and Marita's presentation will be made available in the ICF Team and Group Coaching Community Group on LinkedIn. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our program speaker, Marita Fridjhon. Marita is a professional certified coach, professional certified coactive coach, and organizational relationship and systems certified coach. Marita is the CEO and co-founder of CRR Global. CRR Global is the only coaching school that offers a systems-based ICF-accredited coach training program. Marita is a consultant to several large organizations and mentor to a number of practitioners in the field of relationship systems intelligence. Marita brings to her work an extensive background in clinical social work, community development, process work, family systems therapy, business consulting, and alternative dispute resolution. And we welcome Marita to the community.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah, I'm here. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here and for this amazing special interest group that that is doing so well. So thank you so much for that. I want to start by just acknowledging that I assume that there is a huge amount of skill, expertise, and competency on the call already. I want to congratulate you on the work that you do, on the interest that you have in team coaching. Chris and I were just talking before the event started that I think that team coaching and developing coaching cultures within organizations are probably 2 of the biggest conversations in the coaching industry at the moment. So it's a timely conversation, and I'm delighted to be with you. Wanted for you to know that we can easily spend an entire day or 3 just talking about the skills and tools that can be used in team coaching and that may set team coaching aside or make it different from individual coaching. So I decided to do something different today. I'd be happy to share tools and skills with you as I can in the broadcast as well, but certainly at a later date. What I wanted to do today is really work and focus on what we believe the paradigm shift needed in order to do justice to systemic work and to team coaching. If I can be successful to some small extent at allowing you to have what we think of as a focal length shift, a shift that is raising the gaze away from, not losing awareness of the individual, but really shifting the gaze so that we can see the whole rather than the individuals within, I would have been successful, and you'll be able to go back and use every tool and skill that you have, but with a different approach. So that's where I would love to go as we go into the presentation and through it. At some stage, I'm going to want to have somebody to do a small dialogue with in terms of a team that you are working with at the moment. So I would love for all of you to, as we enter the conversation, to think of a team that you are currently working with and that may have some hotspots, because I'm going to be looking for a volunteer to be in a brief conversation. Also, would love to have questions from you, and we'll leave a little bit of time at the end for you to, or for me to be able to answer some questions if you have it. So if you do have questions, you can raise hands or type them in, and we will try to get to them. I will have our tech team sort through them and capture them, and we'll hope to answer some of the questions. So if we then go to the nuts and bolts of where we want to look today, I want for you to really, our topic is about coaching intelligent teams and working with intelligent teams, and that has a supposition underneath that statement that I will get closer to as we continue the work. That if you can really think in terms of the teams that you are working with as sets of unlimited potential when you are looking at the strings and the not knowing what happens in the unfolding of that. I, with some respect, want to say that I believe that in today's coaching, when we think about team coaching, I believe that there is a large number of people that are still focused very much on the individual within the team, or the individual contribution or the individual failure. We're so heavily influenced in the coaching profession, particularly in the US, but in other countries as well, deeply influenced by the individual coaching paradigm, by executive coaching, life coaching. So most of us bring that skill set with us when we step in front of a team or within an organization or a community or even a family. So that's the place where I wanted for us to begin to shift our focus to something else. And just want for you to know, many of you on the call, I believe, do know me. Most of you may not. But want for you to know that I grew up in South Africa during the apartheid era. And I think that that forever influenced the way in which I look at groups, environments, countries, and larger systems, where when it became clear that there was not much that the individual activist could do to bring about the change that eventually happened, and the change eventually happened because of massive group and systemic involvement. So whenever you begin to look at revolutions these days and different uprisings, just know that there is a systems mind behind that, and that's part of where we want to begin to look. So want for you to begin to raise the gaze from the individual potential, because if we don't, here's one of the things that, if we bring some lightness to it, If we stay in the individual frame where one person is across from the other, we begin to have this conversation. And it really leads us to, while we hold this focus, it really leads us to the assumption or the question of who did what to whom. Who was responsible for what's happening? If we can begin to, how many of you, when you start working with an organization or entered a team for coaching, was asked to please just focus on that member. So-and-so is the challenge for our organization, for our team. If you could help us to have that person shape up, then we will be in a better place. And that's one of the places where we believe we want to look differently. So this is the place where I'm wondering, is there somebody that are thinking of a team that you are working with at the moment where there may be a hotspot, there may be some difficulty with a team? Is there anybody, raise some hands, anybody that's interested in maybe stepping up and be for just a brief conversation, about that? Anybody that's willing to step out to do that? Chris, can you see anybody?
Yeah, if someone would like to volunteer, if they'll just raise their hand on the control panel, and let's see if who volunteers here. Looks like we've got someone right here. I'm going to unmute Nicolea.
So do we have somebody unmuted that may be interested in have that conversation with us?
Having some difficulties with the audio here, unmuting someone. Let's see.
Can you?
Hello, this is Karel van Hoey speaking. Am I unmuted now?
I can hear you.
Yes. Well, I've tried to use the little hand, but apparently the little hand disappeared. I could be available for a case if you wish.
Okay, good. Thank you. Could you give me your name again?
I am Karel van Hoey. I'm the co-leader of Chris.
Thank you very much, and thank you for stepping up. So I want for you to talk a little bit. You have a team that you are on or that you're working with, and yes, there is a little bit of a challenge or a hotspot, as we will say. Are you willing to share a little bit of that, and without identifying and holding confidentiality for us?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
In fact, it's a great opportunity because it's a team in which I used to work. But now I'm no longer working on it, precisely for the reason that we did not get fixed the problems. We were basically three people with a very, very strong will, with a, well, some might call it dominant people. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but both with a very strong will. And we were all very great by achieving objectives, by competing amongst each other. But we were not very great by achieving even better objectives and greater objectives by collaborating with each other. Now, everybody has been coached individually, including myself, and there was also a group coach that has been trying to coach us. But for some reason, well, the dynamics were well, they did not appear to be what they should be.
Yes.
And for me, it was a challenge to first of all quit that team, and secondly to position myself as a team coach by frustration, because I never wanted to experience something like.
So if everybody, as you listen, you can hear that Carlos begin to speak to that the nature of the challenge is individuals struggling to collaborate. And that in this moment, as you are talking, Carol, that your attention has been, answer that question again for me. So when you think of that team, who is it and what is it that has your attention?
Well, the attention is a kind of not being able to understand why precisely we did not work, we did not want to work, we could not work as a team, because in terms of competence and experience, we were basically very, very complementary. So it should have worked,
Yes.
but it didn't.
Yes. And then here's the next question. And those of you that are listening to us, I want you to run this at the same time through a team that you either have worked with or that you are presently working with. Because these are really interesting questions when we begin to untangle that web that is the people that are on the team. So if you, Carol, if you can look there and see what is the link that you can see between the team members and the difficulty? It's like, are there any individual pieces, people that you're looking at that that is part of contributing to it? What do you see there? What's the relationship between the players and the difficulty? Did we lose him?
No, I'm still here.
You're here. You're here. Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I wonder if the word relationship is appropriate. I mean, the teams in which I worked that functioned really well. There was a kind of chemistry, a kind of flow, with some even a kind of friendship that made that we never questioned the collaboration, we never questioned the teamwork. In the team I'm talking about now, the relationship remained very, very task-focused, very objective, very rational. There was not a lot of sympathy between people.
Yes.
And well, sometimes we talked about that, and that, well, a question we literally asked, well, why do we need sympathy for? Which we are just here to work together. We are just here to work together. That was one of the phrases of which I basically mentally quit. So
yes.
There was not really a warm human relationship.
There was actually a lack of connection or something, or yeah. So then the last question that I have for you and for everybody that is listening and participating, the last question for now at least, is when things get difficult in a situation like you described, where does your attention go first? So Carl, I hear you talk about the attention went to task.
Yes. Well, let me share now a very, very authentic and vulnerable part of myself. At a certain moment when things really got hot, and when you clearly observe and see no willingness at the other side to collaborate, to build a team, to work together, then, well, I simply used myself as well the two-word phrase that starts with an F and that ends with a U. So I also started focusing on my own job, on my own targets. Well, so far for the team. I think that there we missed chances. If at that moment we would have had an appropriate external guide helping us to name our problems and to share our frustrations and pain, it would have helped certainly at that moment. But then it started with one person quitting the team, and then the atmosphere was completely beyond zero, and then I was the second who left the team. So
yes, and so it sort of disintegrated again to the individuals that take their leave, that move out, that that are in the conversation. Carl, I'm going to leave you a little bit frustrated for a moment, but I do want you back later on. Want to do a little work and share some theory and research with you, and then I would love for you to be back for a second conversation with a different focus. Are you willing?
With pleasure.
Thank you, thank you. We'll talk to you in a little bit more.
I'm going to mute it.
Thank you. I wonder how many of you, and I'm sure a number of you do resonate with the conversation we just had, where there's a hotspot, and it's like there is what Carl is talking about. There is the no chemistry, no flow. There is a loss of synergy, and it really begins to be that conversation that is about who does what to whom, and who can be fixed. And one of the things that we've seen so often is you think you fix, quote unquote, one person, but the difficulty continues because it's actually, this is where I want for you to begin to really pay different attention, because the issue is often not personal, it's systemic. And the question then is, how do we work with that? There's been some very interesting research in the last years out of MIT Sloan School of Management, the work of Professor Malone, that really lines up with the notion that we begin to work with, that is around relational systems intelligence, and it's speaking to an intelligence that's available, that belongs actually to the system or to the team. And they did some interesting research that started on, with intellectual, with IQ, and they were putting teams together randomly out of 600 plus people, and they gave them tasks. And there was the question whether the teams that are most collectively intelligent, would they be the teams that have the highest IQ collectively? And what they found was that actually had no bearing on resilience and efficacy in teams. They discovered that collective intelligence really is about that the whole can be greater than the sum of its parts, and that collective intelligence leading to efficacy of task and resilience extends beyond the cognitive abilities of the group individual members. They found some interesting things. They discovered that the most intelligent, collectively intelligent groups were the ones that had A, very strong social awareness. Members had very strong social awareness. They were paying attention to one another. B, the groups that were most intelligent collectively were the groups that had roundtable conversations, where there was the absence of a leader that tells the group what to do, but it was a collective effort. Given that, often the groups that were most effective were the groups that had a variety of expertise rather than everybody having the same expertise, because this research has been replicated in other places as well, where the more diversity there is, the more creativity that shows up. The other thing that they found, for those of you that are women on the call, was that the groups that were most collectively intelligent had a higher number of women in the group. I don't know that that has anything to do with us particularly, other than generally speaking, women tend to have more and different social awareness, so it relates back to the first finding. That's the piece that I want to begin to take your attention to, that there really is a different intelligence within teams that we can access if we raise the gaze beyond the focus on individual performance to the collective whole and begin to work with that differently. So we started talking about relationship systems intelligence, and on the way there, it really is useful to look at the different intelligences, that, again, very simplistic definition here of the EQ work, that the emotional intelligence is about the capacity to identify, express skillfully my own emotions, know who I am, what I am, and what's happening. That has always been very closely linked to social intelligence. That is about the ability to not only step into my own shoes, but also be able to step into somebody else's shoes and make relationship with that. Which is why in research now mostly we see reference to ESI, emotional social intelligence, because those two have always been very closely linked. The place where we began to look, and it's empiric evidence, we don't have any research directly, but it is borne out also by some of the research that I just cited, is that when we're talking about RSI, or relationship systems intelligence, we really are referring to our ability to interpret my experience as personal to me, but also belonging to the system. It is personal, but it is not personal. It is an expression of the system. And that begins to shift something. So when we start looking at relation systems intelligence, and there is a paper that we'll make available to you as well, it's a white paper on RSI and leadership, we see some very interesting things. So when we think in the direction of intelligent teams, these are the things that we are very interested in. We hold that, we're going to give you 5 principles. Don't have to pay attention to all of them. We're going to work with number 1 and 5 more directly. You will have the whole article, so just hold the rest as backdrop. But this first one is that each system forms or creates its own entity that has a unique personality. We may call that personality culture, but it's unique. Think of every team you have worked with. Think of every partnership you know. It is distinctly different. It behaves in a way that's different from any other team or group that you're working with. You can't, it's not, it has its own personality. It has its own expression. We talk about that as the team entity, or the team system, if you don't want to be too woo-woo. It's the team entity, the organizational entity. Just think about it. Think about all the different tech companies and how they express differently. And you begin to feel into the fact that there is its own unique entity, its own unique culture and way of expression. That whether people come and go, that stays fairly constant. The second piece that is then important is the individual doesn't disappear. They are part of that system. But if you think of this thing that we call a team entity, the only way that it can express itself is through the players, or one of the ways that it can express itself. So when Carl was talking about the dissatisfaction, the chemistry not missing, the flow not being there, the task focused, if we begin to think of that team member as expressing not only their own experience, but it is expressing the experience of the team entity, then you begin to feel and hold it differently. So we are saying that there's a unique entity, and that players within that team is seen and heard as voices, as heard as a voice of that entity and that system. The third principle, and this is a really important one, is that the system, the team system entity, has to rely on roles for organizational structure and execution. You know that systems organize itself through roles, and the role belongs to the system. That's really important. The role belongs to the team. Each one of us individually, because of our background or because of our own personal history, are better suited for certain roles, but the role belongs to the team. It's personal, but it's also not personal. And when you begin to feel into that, you begin to get to the systemic nature of events. I don't know how many of you have had an experience where we work with that sponsor that I talked about earlier, the HR person, the senior VP that says, look, just help me get so-and-so in line. That's the problem we have on the team. If that person can toe the line and can be more skillful or whatever, we won't have a problem. And then at some point, maybe that person gets fired or gets laid off. And I bet you have had the experience where when that person leaves, somebody else steps into that role. Because the difficulty is systemic. It's not only belonging to the individual, it belongs to the system. These are the shifts that I'm asking you to consider. Because if you begin to look here, you will soften your gaze on the individual, and you will begin to feel into this fourth principle that is about intelligent teams, that the system itself, beyond its members, has a creativity, has an intelligence, and is generative. And that's what we want to begin to tap into. I am not saying that there are not teams, organizations that are uncoachable. I'm not saying that there are that there's always a perfect answer. I am saying that there is an answer, there is a direction that we can get from the team entity, from the system itself, if we begin to relate to it rather than to the individual members. And then finally, here's the piece that is really challenging for us in modern business, in modern organizations, in a modern world, that systems has always been in a state of emergence. Always. That's what systems do. It evolves, it matures, it dies, and then it evolves again, it matures and shifts. The emergence, the change that's happening at the moment, however, the speed of it had increased by so much that simply it is not possible for the individual leader, team leader, CEO to navigate all of it. And this is the piece that would be really, really important for us to get to. That unless we can begin to access the generative nature, the creative nature, the intelligent nature of the system itself, there is not much that we can do fast enough as individual leaders, as individual coaches. We have to be able to connect with the collective from which we can work. We have to be able to connect to the entity that is the team. That does not mean that executive coaching goes away. It does not mean that there is no life coaching. The only thing it means is that when I do executive coaching, which I do a lot, I do it within the context that the individual that I coach is an expression of the system that they belong to. The individual that I'm coaching is an expression not only of who they are, but they're an expression of the intelligence and the emergent nature of the team that they are part of. If I can hold that, I see a very different picture, even of my individual client. If I can remember that when I coach my CFO in terms of what needs to happen or what they want to happen in the company around the financial expression, when I coach that CFO, I need to remember that he or she will return to the system out of which they came. And the system may or may not support the change that they want to make. So in my executive coaching, that's something that I need to look at. And this is why I'm saying that sitting with you in the fire and saying that team coaching must be one of the biggest conversations we have in the coaching industry at the moment, because we have to be side by side with our executive coach colleagues, with our life coaching colleagues, because the CFO that I am coaching in executive coaching goes home to a wife and family. That's where he comes back to work from. So whether I identify as a team coach or not, I believe the time has come that we need to know that regardless of my focus, I am a systems coach, because there's nobody that I coach that does not belong to a team or an entity or a system that has generativity, intelligence, and is in a state of emergence. So if we look at that, then we begin to see that what were the separate balls of string that we looked at earlier actually is that web of connectivity. The thing that in modern systems thinking has always been talked about is this web of interconnectedness. We are interdependent. If I pull at the red string, I will affect the green, the blue, and the yellow. It's inevitable. So instead of looking at the individuals, begin to lift the gaze and look at the web of connectivity between them and hold the focus there. In the work that we do at Sierra Global, we talk about that the web of connectivity, the relationship, the team itself is the client. Not the CEO, not the individual members, the team itself. And we stand, when we think of the team as coachable, when we think of the system as coachable, we stand firmly in the reality for us that every member of the system is an expression. It's a signal for that system. And it is a signal for the thing that Otto Schramer also talked about in his newest book, Leading from the Emergent Future. Everything that's happening, everything that we are working with is in a state of emergence. And very often we see that as an emergency. If we can back away from it and come alongside it, then we can begin to see that there is something that is in a state of emergence, that there is something that's trying to happen. So, and if we hold that there's a wisdom in what's trying to happen, whether it is for a team to shift and separate in the way that Carl talked about earlier, or whether it is for a new evolution, there is a direction that the system is moving towards. I live in California, and one of the things that I often talk about is that if you think the redwoods, our precious redwoods actually, the redwood tree to some extent depends on fire to take it down, because it's out of that burnt tree that the new shoots come. So we hold a certain intelligence and creativity even in breakdown. And if you just think in terms of what's happening in the world at the moment, there is something that is trying to be expressed, and and how it is expressed is often not skillful. We hold that there is an intelligence beneath it that actually does have an expression that needs to be paid attention to, needs to listen, needs to find evolution. So I would love, Carl, if we can have you back. I would love to be able to have you reconsider that team that you were in that we talked about earlier. And if you really now look at the big picture, and if you can begin to think about that challenge from that balcony, from that high view, and if you put your attention on that web that is connecting the members, good, bad, I would just, I'm curious what you see now, if we can have Carl back.
Mm-hmm. You hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Well, unfortunately, trying to imagine a web of connectivity, I don't see a lot, which explains exactly why we were not a team. Now, an awareness that I'm getting through this webinar is that, well, if I think back about it now, the role of our manager, I was not a manager of the team, but the role of the manager, thinking back at things now, it is not my impression that she that she did a lot of efforts to make us, or to create us into a better team. When we occasionally talked about it, she said, well, you're all adult people. I do not see a lot what I could do to improve collaboration. She expected us to be more or less kind of self-steering in our becoming a team, but well, that did not happen. And well, for the very few, let's say, nicer and warmer relations and contacts that they were there now and then, they were really kept out of the team. It was just at a certain moment two people who have found a little bit trust in each other and who organized more warm, more human conversations, but they did that in private, and they did that apart from the team. So let's say if I may use the word, the systemic connectivity, as I interpreted from your previous slide, that was not at all there. In fact, we were a group of people who all did their own job, and the communication mainly happened through email, even if we were sitting in front of each other. But thinking back at things, and I thank you for the insight that I gained here, is that, well, without wanting to throw away my own responsibility, I think, quite frankly, that our boss did not such a good job in terms of team building.
Well, part of what you're speaking to is, so thank you for vulnerability and co-responsibility. Part of what Carl is speaking to is the thing that we really remember, that principle that says that systems organize itself through roles for functioning. One of the things that we are talking about in intelligent teams hold leadership to be a role that belongs to the system. At any given moment in time, anyone can take on that leadership role and can express on behalf of the system. And that's part of, so thank you for that vulnerability, that we so often, as we work with teams, we hold the leader responsible, or we hold the person responsible that is holding the conflict. But at that moment in time, it simply is a role that belongs to the system. And if conflict is what needs to happen, somebody else may be able to step into it, if it belongs to the system, and do it with more skill. In the moment where the team leader fails, somebody else might be able to step in and ask the difficult questions. That is part of what the collective intelligence research points to as well, that it needs to be a roundtable conversation. And that last bullet point that I have up there is something that I want to encourage you all. And I'm going to ask you that question in a minute as well, Carl. If in difficulty working with a team, if you're sitting with a team, it's a really useful question. In the beginning, they may not know what to do with it, but you can trust that over time, it will begin to find traction in a different way. I, on a regular basis, will ask a group. I was working with a very large population of government employees in Canada a couple of months ago, and they were busy with a massive initiative. And we worked with them as individual team members, as team members. There was some executive coaching. I had 250 of them in a room, and we worked in round tables in different nested team systems. So we did a whole day of work that led up to this one question where I asked them at some stage, and they had workbooks that they were working from and with slides up. The question I asked them was, and I'm not going to say the government agency, let's just say government control as the name of the agency. So we did work the whole day around this initiative. And then I asked them to consider, we've heard from all of you, we've heard from each one of your teams. If you, for a moment, think and ask the question, what does control government, that agency, what does the agency need or want? What is it asking for? And we got some very interesting answers. That's the place where you absolutely stand with your heart in your throat, believing fully that the system itself will have an answer. And it might have said, we need more connection. It might have said, we are done. But at least we had a different vantage point. So if I ask you to look back, Carl, at that system that you were part of, that team, and if you could imagine, if it could speak, what would it have asked or said to all of you?
Well, that's a hard one.
Yeah.
What I would say is that the biggest part of your life, basically, you are doing your work. You are sleeping 8 hours a night. You were working more than 8 hours a day, and the rest is your private life. A consideration that I have is that if some people choose to work their entire lives in such circumstances where they are basically very unhappy on their work and feeling pain and misery and frustration like I did, please reconsider your own emotions, please reconsider your own values, and try to think whether these are in line with the one of the organization. And if clearly the organization or the corporate governance structures choose to have an organization like that, because we were not the only team like that, if the organization chooses to work like that, well, then it says probably a lot about the mismatch between you and
Yes.
that organization. This being said, the organizations that actually truly change their culture and leadership on those levels, in my experience, it's a minority. I'm not talking about a team. Its way of functioning, that's another thing, but change an entire culture, change an entire leadership mentality, well, it's kind of unique, those kind of happenings.
Yes.
But these are my reflections on your question.
Thank you so much, Carl. I really appreciate, and for all of you, the question really is, if you can work from this new awareness that is asking and when I listen to Carl, I could say, I could make up many things that team entity might have said something like, go and get a life and then come back to work. Or organizations may say, where there are difficulties, the organization simply is saying, we need a change. Now ask and find out what the change is that we need. It's not about John did so-and-so and Mary did not do that and that. It is about there's a change emerging. And what is it that we need to do about it? If we then look at, when we stand in this, and it's a lot of information for us to really sit with in a short amount of time. But I think that if you begin to go from that relationship systems intelligence perspective that is relying that there are answers in the team entity, then what we've seen is that both individual and team is able to navigate change better, and change is inevitable. It is the biggest challenge we have at the moment, and we are least equipped for it. When we have roundtable conversations and we cultures, there's that interconnectedness that Carl kept on talking about that was missing. We know that if we can do that, if we together can stand and ask the team, what does it want? We have a different opportunity to be in relationship with change. And then really for me, this is it. This is the piece that we need to get with. We have to be able, on a big scale, to move from me, and it's all about me, to we, it is all about us, to it. Whatever it is that you make it. It's an ecocentric. It is about the higher view, the bigger purpose, the bigger mission. It is about it. So the movement from me to we to it becomes possible. And it really leaves us with different co-responsibility, and we know and have seen over and over that there is a different resilience possible. I'm going to hand back to Chris in just a moment, but I really want to leave you just with some pictures to carry with you that life, teams, organizations, it really is just like in nature. It's an unfolding story, and at some stage we are a butterfly, and then we go back to cocoon, and we come out of cocoon and we go to the next state of emergence. I sat on a beach in Puerto Rico a while back watching a hermit crab try to shed its shell, and it was painful to watch because in between shells he was very vulnerable. So it is in nature as well as in industry and human endeavor. It's an unfolding process of becoming. And the system itself knows where it needs to emerge to and what it needs. Just on a very consensus reality place, just notes about no to silo thinking, yes to trust, yes to collaboration, yes to exchange, because we know that when we have that, we really can begin to talk about a dream team. And it's not so much about the perfect team, it is about the team that allows itself to dream, and in the dreaming to ask what's trying to happen, what really is emerging. I said I wanted to have some questions, and I know that Chris wanted the mic back at about 5 minutes before, so I'm going to hand back to him with the invitation. If there are any questions that you have, to please connect with me directly, or however you guys can figure it out. I am so eager to be in this conversation and to keep on evolving our thinking of this. So thank you so much for showing up and for staying present as you did. Chris, again, congratulations, you guys, on the work that you do, and I would love to continue to support however I can. Thank you.
Thanks, Marita. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and wisdom with the community today. I don't know if you have a few minutes We had several questions that came in on text. If you can stick around, I can convey those to you either on the webinar or I can email those to you. It's totally up to you. I do want to thank all of you in the community for participating today. I would ask you to please complete the brief survey that will appear on your screen or in your email following the webinar. This information is really going to help Carl and I meet and anticipate your needs. Today's program is really sort of pushing us outside of our comfort zone. We were trying something new. We are learning a lot, and so we appreciate everyone for playing along and participating. The second password for today's program is NIGHT, N-I-G-H-T, NIGHT. Again, the second password for today's program is NIGHT, and if you would like the core competency CCE offered for today's program, you can send an email to icfteamcoaching@gmail.com, and Elizabeth Jackson will fulfill your request. Be sure to include both the first and the second password I shared with you. And I just want to thank everyone for participating in today's program. I invite you to join us next month on Tuesday, November 3rd, when Carl Van Hoy will host Jennifer Britton. Jennifer is the author of Effective Group Coaching and From One to Many Best Practices for Team and Group Coaching. And I want to thank everyone and hope you all have a beautiful day. Marita, we have a few questions. Do you have a couple minutes? Or
sure.
Would you rather
yes, I'm aware of your time, and I'd be happy to stay a couple of minutes.
Okay, so a few questions have come in. And the first question is, and just lots of positive feedback, and thanks to you, Marita. So the first question coming in is, this is from Christy Braden, and Christy asked, what practices or approaches can help a team make the shift from me to we to it, and to help them truly visualize the team as the third entity? Thank you.
Actually, if we don't talk too much about it and try to explain too much about it, it's usually helpful to hear from individuals. So keep on hearing from individuals, like the way I talked about the government group we work with. We spent the entire day to hear individuals, to hear the teams. So once people have expressed what they think is only their own opinions, if you then turn them to, well, just imagine that the organization that you're part of, or that the team that is you, have a voice too, and what might it say about it? Over time they get more comfortable with that. But there's usually a number of people that will speak, and what we often do is create just have a chair at the top of the table or somewhere that's empty, and say, when you go and sit there, speak on behalf of the team, and then it's your job to make sure that they not say from the team chair the things that they have said all along. So you can say to them, it sounds like that's still you, so go back to your seat. Come back when you're ready to speak for the team. So those kinds of, we are very experiential in our work, and those kinds of where they literally step out of their own seat and occupy a different field. I have never not had that work, provided I think you do enough on-ramping for them.
Okay, one other question that came in is from Iajiro, and they state, if someone in the team is blaming an individual, Mr. X, for example, and it is the mode of, if we fix Mr. X, our team will become fine. Is there a magical way for a coach or another team member to shift this person's mind from that individual to the system? Mm-hmm. This person believes 120% of the problem is Mr. X's fault.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, we do a lot of educating. So we will educate people that whenever something like that happens, educate about roles. We talk about external roles, which is the job description. Internal roles, that is, the troublester or the complainer, or those are inner roles. And so we do a lot of work around roles. So read up on that if you can. And then there is, one of the things that I often do is I talk about how it is a statistical anomaly. If I have a team of 9 people, and one person is the problem. There's a statistical anomaly because it's 1 against 8. So somewhere either the one person serves a function for the 8, or the 8 are collaborating in the process, because 8 against 1 usually the lower number, loses if you look just at statistics. So we'll talk a little bit about that. The other thing is to speak to, if we take X out of the circle, just put him somewhere else, and then each one of us begin to look at what is the version of what he does or she does. What is the version of that I do? So have each member look at, if that's what he does, then what does my version look like? And usually that begins to open it up to, there are other people that may be able to be more skillful, because you can then begin to talk, and if all of us have a version, what about it is useful? What is it that we don't have that this thing that we're just talking about is giving us? Do we have to have more backbone? Do we have to, but if you begin to open it in that direction and release that person from the role, it may not be magical in the moment, but over time. And then, there's always, this is a place where we may want to refer X out for executive coaching and work closely with a coach that X is coaching, and have X bring some of that experience back and share with the team. This is a place where I won't do executive coaching with a member of the team, but I will refer that member to somebody else. If